Okay, panel members, you ready to go? Okay. Jay? Yep, okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment Hearings for Suburban Panel 2. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centerpoint Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived and available for viewing by the public. My name is Fabian Poulin. I will be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak. And we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make the final comments in reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting first with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision. Today, we will be reserving all decisions. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure we'll be following today? No one has any questions? So we have several applications to hear today, but I need to deal with one procedural item. Does any member of the panel have any declarations of interest on any of the applications before us or before any other panel? Ms. McLean? No, there are no declarations of interest. Turning to the applications that are before us, we will first deal with any unopposed applications that are straightforward and recommended for quick approval if there are no objections. I believe we have one application that is on the unopposed list, and that is 121 James Cummings. Mr. B. Davis, are you available? Okay. And that's fine. I just wanted to make sure somebody was here. That's good. Thank you. This is an unopposed application, and I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. If all those in favor, please raise your hands. This application has been approved. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're moving on to application number 1, having to do with 1704 Boyer. Is there a J. Daou available?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Could you state your name, please, and your address?
Jessica Daou, 43 Echo Street, Ottawa.
Okay. Ms. Daou, could you give us a brief description of your application today?
Absolutely. So this is an application for consents at the property municipally known as 1704 Boyer Road. This is a fairly straightforward application. We are proposing to subdivide the lot in half with no proposed easements or right-of-ways for the purpose of creating two new lots. Each are fully zoning compliant. They both exceed the zoning requirements for lot area and lot width. And the purpose of the consent application is to construct two new single detached dwellings in the future, each of which will be also fully zoning compliant. I do have a full presentation if the committee members do wish to see it, but that's just the brief synopsis. It's our opinion that this application meets all of the criteria under Section 5124 of the Planning Act.
Thank you, Ms. Dale. I'd now like to ask the panel if they have any questions. Mr. Barrett? No, I don't. Ms. Wright? No, I don't. Mr. Baltz? Ms. McLean?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask our planning department if they have any comments to make with respect to this application. Looking for Jessica Gilbert or Jerica Gilbert, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. We do want to introduce an amendment to one of the conditions, condition 4. That one was speaking to tree information report and requesting a revised version. The applicant has since provided a new tree information report, and the forestry planner would like to amend that condition just to ensure that the basically what is presented in the tree information report is carried through to the building permit stage.
Are you able to provide us with that wording? And how's the applicant seen that wording?
Mr. Chair, I just had a chance to review it about 15 minutes ago. I have seen it and we would agree to that wording.
You are agreeable?
Yes.
And what about the other conditions concerning this application? Are you agree with all those conditions as well?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the planning services. Ms. McLean? I saw you say no, but I didn't hear you say no.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baltz?
Yeah, very briefly, we did receive one letter of opposition based on neighborhood character and loss of green space. So I'm just wondering what the response of the planning department is to that.
Thank you, committee. We did note the letter of opposition that did speak to neighborhood character. That being said, intensification and infill are supported by our plans and policies. And our planning opinion hasn't changed on this application based on the opposition. We think it will, if all the conditions are followed through with, it will be a good addition to the Boyer Road community.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. Okay. Mr. Barrett?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was another letter that we received just recently on this item. Could staff speak to that letter as well?
Sorry, Mr. Barrett, I didn't see one.
There was a different application.
It's a different application. I believe it's application number 2. I think.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was one from a resident that was in the package and one that we received today.
Yes.
That's true. Sorry.
Yes, there was an
Okay.
additional
Okay.
letter.
Can you speak to that?
My apologies, committee. I have not seen that letter.
Brief synopsis then, Mr. Barrett.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the letter objects to this proposal, this item, due to their longstanding members in the community, 33 years. They are concerned about the creation of the new lots, and they're concerned about their character of their community, and the construction will be an eyesore in time, as well as the construction of the houses, and they do not reflect the neighborhood. So it's a character of neighborhood comment.
Ms. Gilbert, so does it meet all the 4 tests required here? Or the
Well,
test?
Since there are no variances required, there's no need to meet the 4 tests, but it does meet Section 53 of the Planning Act for the review of consent applications. It's in line with the policies of the official plan. It's in line with the policies and bylaws of the zoning bylaw and our other urban design guidelines and what have you. And I just want to speak, these are single detached houses that will be going in there. They may be able or capable of a secondary dwelling unit as per Bill 23. But in my mind, this is still, even though the lots may be narrower, within the character of this neighborhood. And it's actually reflective of if the committee were to look at adjacent streets, very in line to what is already there. So that is my response.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I'd like to ask the applicant if you've got any further comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me, I also was not provided with that most recent letter of opposition, but just speaking to the character of the neighborhood, as Derek has noted, this street in particular, the west side of Boyer Road, is characterized by large double wide lots. The underlying plan of subdivision appears to have previously slated these as actually half of the lot would have been one lot. Sorry. So it's lot 4 and lot 5. So previously it would have been 2 whole lots, likely that have merged and were developed as one. So the west side of Boyer Road is still those double wide lots. However, the east side of Boyer Road is all lots that are the single width and are the same width as what is being proposed with the new lot, but actually, in fact, quite a bit smaller. They're a lot less deep than this lot is. So those lots in overall character are quite a bit smaller than this lot. And that is characteristic of all of the surrounding local streets. So the east side of Boyer Road is really the only street that still remains with some double wide lots. Many of those have been redeveloped in recent past, it appears, with very large single family homes that occupy a majority of the lot as well. So the proposal to introduce 2 new singles does meet the intensification policies of the official plan. Again, these lots are very much zoning compliant. They actually exceed the zoning requirements almost triple for lot area. And in terms of lot width, the required is only 9 and each is providing 11.42. So we do meet all zoning criteria. So it's our opinion that this application is very much in line with the intensification policies under the official plan. It meets the zoning requirements and it meets the criteria under 5124 of the Planning Act.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Baltz? Ms. Wright? Mr. Barrett? No. Ms. McLean?
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dow. We're going to be reserving this judgment on this application and we'll let you know within 10 days the results.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to application number 2, having to do with 3882 Barnsdale. Mr. T. Freeman, are you available? Good morning.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Could you give us a brief description? Mr. Freeman, first of all, could you state your name and your address, please?
Yes, my name is Thomas Freeman. I'm a planner at FOTEN. We're at 396 Cooper Street.
Thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping for the PRED report. The zoning designation is to be RU, MR1, and AG. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
Okay, could you give us a brief description of this application today?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So the lands are located in Barhaven South. They have frontage on Barnsdale Road and Boris O'Kane. And the owner is proposing to adjust the lot line between 3882 Barnsdale Road and 396 Greenbank Road for conveyance purposes. Part 2 on the draft reference plan will be severed and consolidated with Part 3 on the reference plan, and Part 1 is the resulting retained lot. So no development is proposed as part of this lot line adjustment application. It's more for an internal with the company. So with the investors that are that make up these lands, they are subdividing it or not subdividing, sorry, adjusting the lot line to reflect this ownership agreement.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Chair, would it be possible to put the map up so that it's recorded for for posterity and we can see it?
And refer to slide 4 of my presentation,
There you go.
or that's the reference plan. Yeah, so it might be hard to see, but on the left side, that is Boris O'Kane. That is the retained parcel, and the area part 2, which fronts onto Barnsdale Road, it will be severed from part 1, and it as a condition of approval of this lot line adjustment application, it will be consolidated with part 3.
Now, Mr. Freeman, where am I now? So are you aware of the conditions for this application to be approved?
Yes, we are aware of the
Do you
conditions.
agree with them?
Yes, we have reviewed them with our lawyer.
Thank you. Does the panel have any questions? Mr. Baltz? Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Freeman, can you just confirm that part 3 has frontage, I couldn't see where it abutted Greenbank Road.
Oh, well, it does have frontage with its existing subdivision that is currently being developed, and the roads will be built as part of that. It does have frontage, but it's not necessarily Greenbank. It's kind of it's a weird situation where the addressing hasn't been updated as part of the new subdivision. But the adjacent lands that are part of the urban boundary are also owned by Minto, and they're currently being developed.
So part 3,
But currently, part 3 doesn't have any road, public street frontage?
Yes, it does. It does have frontage. The road has been built, but it's not Greenbank. It's kind of an anomaly with the addressing.
Okay, thank you.
existing subdivision that's there, that they're being developed. I drive by that property every day pretty much, and there is residential streets being created there right now.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Ms. Freeman?
That's correct.
Okay, so Ms. Wright, any comments, questions? No. Mr. Barrett, any questions? No, thank you. Okay. So Mr. Freeman will be reserving judgment on this today, but you'll receive the results of our deliberations in 10 days.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next one is on to number 4, having to do with 56 Capilano. H. Khan, are you available?
So my colleague is here, but I'll be speaking today.
Could you please tell us your name and your address?
Eric, I'm senior planner at Function, and the address is 396 River Street.
How do you spell your last name?
Eric, A-I-R-T.
Can you do it again?
Pardon me. My last name is Aird, A-I-R-D.
Thank you. we have some housekeeping duties to perform on this notice. First of all, with respect to A 00217. The notice suggests that it deals with parts 1 and 5. Sorry, parts 2, 3, and 4. However, it is actually parts 1 and 5. Is that correct, Ms. Aird?
Sorry, I'm just pulling up my copy of the notice. So I can confirm the numbers I thought I had in my hands.
No worries.
Here we go. Yes, so the townhouse block 58 Capilano should be parts 1 and 5, and the area is 682 square meters.
So we've got a difference. So I'd like to deal just with the application number, not with the
Oh.
address at this point.
Okay, so
A00217. Is this now part 1 and 5, not part 2, 3, and 4?
that's correct.
Okay, next one is A00201. This one is now parts 2, 3, and 4, not part 1 and 5.
Yes.
Okay. The third amendment is having to do with the low-rise apartment unit. Was 56, now there are going to be 54 low-rise apartment units.
That's correct.
And each unit will now be 682 meters squared versus 681 meters squared.
So that's part 1 and 5. So that is the townhouse block, and the total area is 682 square meters.
So let's just back up here for a second. So the apartment building we were dealing with is not what we were talking about. Is that correct? So
That's correct.
56 is now down to 54 units in the low-rise apartment building.
So I believe that the address for the apartment building should be 58 Capilano. It's on parts 2, 3, and 4 of the draft reference plan. There are 54 units.
Great. And the sizes of the units?
We don't have the sizes of the units specified.
Okay. And having to do with the townhouse units, now they will be 2091 meters squared versus what's on the notice of 2092.
Sorry, that is the area for the entirety of the apartment block. 2092 square meters is the entirety of the apartment block. The area of the entirety of the townhouse block is 682 square meters.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And the last amendment is that the property is the subject of another current application under the Planning Act.
That's
as
correct.
opposed to what the notice states that is not. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, perfect. We now ask you to give us a brief description of your application today.
Yes, certainly. And just before I start, I'd just like to confirm that the committee got 2 other pieces of correspondence. First, an updated site plan. One of the variances was missed on the notice. And so we've amended the site plan so that variance is no longer required. So just confirming that the committee has received those. Excellent.
Yeah,
And we did also provide a letter just outlining some of the timeline and funding context. Okay, thank you.
yes,
So I'll give a brief presentation. There are several people online who are also available to answer any questions that the committee might have about funding. So just briefly, Krista McIntosh from Salis, Dana Sehar, who's with the City of Ottawa Housing Department, can answer questions about funding. Alex Sargent at CSV Architects, Lindsay Blair at CADCO, and Alessandro Gorno for the property owner. So with that, the applications before you today are to permit a purpose-built, supportive, affordable housing project to support independent living and aging in place for adults living with serious mental illness. It'll be owned and operated by Salis as a single development. So the 54 studio units in the apartment building and then 4 townhouse units in a building at the front of the lot, which are intended to allow Salis's clients to live together in a single household. I do have a presentation, but perhaps it's not necessary. The subject property is designated neighborhood and it abuts properties to the west that are designated Main Street corridor. Prior to 2022, the lands were zoned community leisure, but a rezoning was sought to rezone to R4Z, permit 0 resident parking, and reduce the west interior side lot line. That was approved in October 2022, and the intent was to facilitate the bringing on board of an affordable housing partner. So Salas came on board and has updated the design from that time to include the townhouse block. As mentioned, a site plan control was submitted in March of this year, and we're in the very final stages. We are under timeline constraints in that the funding, the Rapid Housing Initiative funding that is coming through CMHC through the City of Ottawa to fund this project requires conditional permits by November 1st. So subject to the decision of the committee, we have worked with staff to have a reasonable approach to meeting those requirements. But it had that funding requirement has driven the majority of what you see before you today. So there are several variances that would have been required independent of the severance, but the consent and the vast majority of the variances are really to facilitate just the financing being tied just to the apartment blocks. So just briefly, the variances that are required independent of the severance are to permit slightly wider front yard walkways, and to permit 3 of them. That's for barrier-free access to the units. To permit the 1 visitor parking space associated with the townhouse units, a required space to be reduced in length. And then finally, to reduce the interior side yard setback along the east property line for the apartment block. Typically, the zoning bylaw sets out kind of a notched setback to protect amenity space on adjacent rear yards. In this case, our adjacent property is the driveway for a curling club, so no impact is anticipated from that. So with respect to the severance, the townhouse and its associated parking are on one block described as parts 1 and 5. The apartment building and its associated parking and amenity space are on parts 2, 3, and 4 in the draft reference plan. And then easements are proposed to protect the vehicular access for the townhome parking spaces and the servicing over parts 3 and 4 on the draft reference plan. And conversely, on the townhouse block, part 5 is proposed to have an easement that we're seeking the consent of the committee for to provide walkway access. Both lots are compliant with respect to area. However, the R4Z zoning does require a minimum lot width of 18 meters for an apartment building. Because of the flag lot configuration, we have a frontage of only 13 meters. So that is a variance that we're seeking the committee's approval for. There are a number of variances related to the severance that are created purely because this site was developed as a planned unit development and as 1 lot for zoning purposes, and now we require those. I'm happy to go through them in detail, but in the interest of time, I'll skip over them for now. So just in conclusion, it is my professional opinion that the consent meets the criteria set out in the Planning Act, and that the variances together and separately meet the 4 tests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd. Are you familiar with the conditions? If this application is-
I have, we have reviewed the 1 condition proposed for the joint use and maintenance agreement and are in agreement.
The other 3 are just standard.
Yes.
Adjustment. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the panel for any questions that they have. Mr. Baltz?
So for the variances, there are 4, if I counted them right, that would survive even if that was a PUD, correct?
That's right.
And I think the front yard walkway widths is well dealt with in here for access. Visitor space was dealt with here, and the interior side yards adjacent to a driveway. So the 3 walkway one, is that simply an artifact of the townhouses not being individually severed?
Yes, so we requested that out of an abundance of caution. I'm honestly not sure how you would typically apply it, because it would make sense for each unit, I would think, to have their own walkway. Often townhouses have driveways, so perhaps that's an artifact. I can't speak to the intent of the zoning on that one.
Presumably, if each townhouse was severed on its own lot, it gets to have a walkway.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. And perhaps, yeah, I'm seeing.
Okay, Ms. Wright, anything? No questions. Okay, any questions, Mr. Barrett? Okay, thank you very much. I'd now like to ask our planning department for their comments with respect to this application.
Good evening, the chair. So planning has no concerns with this application. We've reviewed it against the 4 tests as well as the criteria for the severance application and are satisfied that it meets them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Gatchin. I'd now like to ask the panel if they've got any questions for planning departments, right?
No, I don't.
Ms. McLean,
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barrett? No. Mr. Baltz?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to see if there's anybody from the public who would like to make any comments with respect to this application. Anyone online? Nope, there are no questions from those online. Ms. Aird, would you like to have the final word?
Just briefly to say that obviously this is a project of high social import. We are in a little bit of an unfortunate situation with the timing. Understanding, of course, that it's the committee's typical practice to reserve decisions. If you were in a position to grant an oral decision today, it would certainly facilitate, I think, the work that we're doing with city staff to finalize the site plan control application, but obviously don't wish to overstep with that request.
Okay, thank you. Well, Ms. Aird, I'll think we'll ask the panels to see if they're willing to entertain making a decision on this right now. So I'll ask the panel for approval to take a vote to decide on this decision right now. All those in favor of voting today, I'll raise your hands. Yes, so we're unanimous. So I'd like to ask the panel then for approval of this application with all conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Aird. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, now moving on to application number 5. This has to do with 105 Helmsdale and 340 Terry Fox. I'm looking for Mr. Ireland, James Ireland.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Now, we didn't have a declaration or affidavit of your sign posting on the property, therefore I have to administer an oath concerning the sign posting. Can you take that oath today?
Yes, I can.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you very much. Could you please give us a brief description of your application today, sir?
Okay, certainly. The subject site is 2 properties in the Capilano North Business Park near the intersection of Terry Fox Drive and Helmsdale Drive. The eastern property is 340 Terry Fox. That's occupied by an office building. The western property is 105 Helmsdale. That's occupied by a soccer field, so no buildings. And historically, the parking lot for the office building has gone across the current property line. And the owner of both properties, same owner, would like to just normalize that situation and use a lot line adjustment to move the lot line to the west. So taking land from 105 Helmsdale, giving it to 340 Terry Fox. And so the parking lot is wholly within 340 Terry Fox. Drainage does cross the property line and will cross the new property line. So we have applied also for a drainage easement to accommodate that. I saw a draft reference plan flashed up briefly there, but that shows the parcel that will be transferred between the 2 properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for any questions they may have. Ms. McLean?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baltz?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
No questions.
Ms. Wright?
No questions.
Okay, great. I'd now like to move on to our planning department or the city's planning department and ask if they give us some brief comments.
Good evening, Chair. So afternoon. So no concerns from the planning department on this application. We agree that the law line adjustment is appropriate and meets the criteria for the consent. And that noting that the drainage that is shared over those properties is being dealt with through the ECA process, which is currently being reviewed by the city right now before it goes to approval for the province.
Okay. Mr. Ireland, did you look at the requested conditions? Should this application be approved?
Yes, we have reviewed those, and there is one condition, condition number 3, which we would like to have removed. I spoke to Samantha on Friday, and she spoke to the city engineer, and I believe the city are in agreement to remove that condition. It's just not applicable to this application. Otherwise, they're fine.
That has to do with the drainage plan?
Correct, yes.
Great. Ms. Kachin, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll remove that condition then for consideration. Okay, I'd like to ask our panel, Ms. McLean, do you have any comments with respect to this application?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barrett?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baltz?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Ms. Wright?
No.
No further comments? No, I'd like to see if there are any members of the public that have any issues with this application, would like to make some comments or ask some questions. Anyone online? There are no questions then from anyone online. So I would now like to, I'd like to tell you, Mr. Ireland, that we're going to be reserving our judgment today with respect to this application, and you'll receive notification in 10 days of the decision, of the panel's decision. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Next application we'll be dealing with today is application number 6 for 25 Pennard. C. McQuaig, are you available?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good
Christine
afternoon.
McQuaig, agent for the applicant Eli Goshen.
Would you like to give us a brief description of your application today?
Yes, the application today is to subdivide the existing parcel at 25 Pennard Way into 3 parcels to produce a what's effectively a long semi-detached that has frontage on both sides, as well as a 3rd lot for a single detached dwelling. The consents have been reviewed against the relevant sections of the Planning Act, and we require 2 variances on the single detached lot for what is essentially the setbacks that abut the road. 5 meters is required. We are requesting 3 meters, and this applies to the sort of pinch points where the building juts out towards that limit. But there is significant green space that builds back into the rest of the yard.
Could we get the plans up on the screen, please?
Our presentation was submitted, and we can go to page 6 of the presentation, please. If the committee would like, I can provide a full presentation, or I can simply pull up the site plan.
I think we'll pull up the site plan as we
Perfect.
move through. If we have more questions.
So, sorry, move down 2 slides, please. Oh. I think my numbering is a little bit, should be slide 7, should be the site plan for parts 2 and 3. One more. There we go. So this is the site plan for what is effectively the long semi-detached that has frontage on Inverkip and Pennard Way. And then the next slide is the site plan for the single detached dwelling. And so you can see the 3 meter setback and then the portions of the building around that jut in.
Now, there are conditions associated with this application. Should it be approved today?
There has been correspondence between myself and Mr. Grift with regards to the last condition noted for a site triangle. In looking at the survey, I had noted that it appeared a site triangle had already been taken. So Mr. Grift did review with staff, and it was confirmed that a site triangle has already been taken, so that condition can be removed.
Mr. Griff, do you agree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do agree.
Okay, so condition number 8 will be removed for consideration. Okay, now I'd like to ask the panel if you have any questions. Mr. Barrett? No, not this time. Ms. Wright? I do not. Ms. McLean?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baltz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there was a letter that was received in opposition, which you've seen, I assume, and it speaks to the density basically of the mostly of the back-to-back semis. Can you address that?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, I did respond to Mr. Alain and responded to his concerns and advised that The desire for new housing kind of supersedes the desire for on-street parking and that sort of curb retention within the neighborhood. This is a lot that is a remnant parcel of the old subdivision that was never developed. It can support 3 new units and the density is appropriate to the neighborhood. I did provide the resident with some further information about what to expect as our city changes and also sent in the link for, there's a virtual public open house for the new zoning. And I thought that might assist residents in reviewing those types of things, but I did respond to that resident on his comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to ask Mr. Grift to have some comments about this application on behalf of the planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have too much more to ask. Staff is satisfied that it meets the 4 tests as well as section 5124 in the Planning Act in regards to the consent application. There was a bit of back and forth when the applicant had initially made the application. I believe a few of the deficiencies that were identified at the time have now been rectified. They do meet the minimum lot size requirements. So staff is comfortable moving forward with the applications.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask if the panel has any questions for Mr. Grift. Ms. McLean,
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baltz.
Just a quick one. So the pattern where, I forget which part it is, but the back-to-back semi, which is on a through lot, is that repeatable down the block, losing all of the green space in the interior? Or is this specific to, because this part is where the 2 streets narrow together?
Thank you. So I believe the remainder of the street is more townhouses. So there's already a bit of a reduction in terms of landscaping for rear yards, or there is no rear yards. This is just a specific development or issue due to the size of the lot and how they wanted to create it. So the semi-detached in-source created that there was no rear yard and that they were attached that way. So the rest of the street's a bit different because they're towns, and then this one's a semi-detached.
But you don't anticipate this becoming a precedent for losing all rear yards?
No, I do not. So no.
Thank you.
Ms. Wright, any comment, any questions? No, Mr. Barrett? No. Okay, thank you very much. Ms. McQuaig, I guess you have the last word. Anything you want to say?
Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I noted, we reviewed the application in the entirety. We were retained after the original application came to committee. And as Mr. Griff noted, there were a few changes to ensure that everything was compliant with the exception of the setbacks noted for the single detached residential. Those variances were reviewed against the Planning Act 4 tests, and we do believe that they meet the 4 tests collectively, both variances. And we also reviewed the proposed consents against the section of the Planning Act. And it is our opinion that it constitutes good land use planning and meets all of the tests as required.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. So as you know, we're reserving our judgments. And so in the end, you'll receive the decision within 10 days, a written decision of all of our deliberations. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Last item on our agenda today is having to do with 49 Loch Isle. Mr. A. Sewell. Arjun Sewell. Are you available, sir? Oh, there you are.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and your address, please?
Sure. Name is Arjun Sewer with Novatech, and our address is 240 Michael Copeland Drive, Suite 200.
Great. Could you please give us a brief description of your application today?
Yeah, so this application is at 49 Loch Isle Road. This property has a frontage of 24.73 meters and an area of 1,749 square meters. There's currently a single detached dwelling on the property that includes a rear deck, a retaining wall, and with that includes stairs to basement walkout. The rear deck that's existing is located within the 30-meter setback to the normal high water mark. And the proposed development would be to remove that retaining wall and the deck, and to expand the legal non-conforming deck to be located 27.7 meters from the normal high water mark of a water course or water body.
Thank you. I'd like to ask panel for if they have any questions. Ms. Wright?
No, I don't.
Mr. Barrett? No. Mr. Baltz? Ms. McLean?
No, I'd just like to thank Mr. Sir for providing that information on the legal non-conforming use. I think it was important to have it on the record. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the planning department for their comments on this application.
Hi, Mr. Chair. So I'll be speaking on behalf of Ms. Soyak, who's unable to attend a hearing for the planning department. So staff have no concerns with the minor variance application itself. And I think we will speak to the matter of the conditions afterward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the panel? Mr. Barrett? No. Ms. Wright?
No.
Ms. McLean?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Baltz? Great. Now, one thing I didn't ask you, Mr. Sewer, is about the conditions. You agree with all those two conditions?
So there's one condition that we have on the staff report, and we do not agree to that condition.
The other condition is a standard one. It's subject to location size for post construction being in accordance with the plans filed. That's the second condition. It's a standard one that we have all the time. Okay. All right. So you've got an issue with the scope EIS?
Correct.
Okay. I wonder if Mr. Griff, could you describe the scope EIS for the panel, what it involves?
Mr. Chair, I will proceed to give an explanation. So the scope EIS the Planning Act allows the committee to impose conditions for minor variance applications. And the reason for this scope EIS is because of the nature of the application to locate the deck within the 30-meter setback. And I had spoken with our environmental planner and explained that an EIS is something they would just want to review. It's just, and I mean by scope is that it's not like your typical report EIS where you may see with a different development application where it's 20 pages long with diagrams, images. What the planning department is proposing here is more like just a letter from an environmental consultant confirming that what environmental impacts are, if any, as a result of the deck. And so it would be very short in nature, more like a memo rather than a full EIS report. And that's why we're requesting it, just in terms of if we are permitting this deck to be located within the setback, then we want to make sure that there's no negative impacts. And having that record of that, as we feel, is important as we continue to move forward, not just from this application, but in the future as well.
Thank you. Do you think you could do that kind of a thing, Mr. Sewer?
So we'll outline our argument in terms of the requirement for a scope EIS, but I don't want to really make this a question of whether it's an onerous thing for the owner to have to do or not, or whether there's a size of the report or whatever that's too difficult to complete. I think it's an issue of going back and forth and coming up with this, scoping the EIS, and then also coming up with a planting plan that works for the department as well. The way that we see it is there is direction in the official plan that does point to the guidelines for completing an EIS. Those guidelines to complete the EIS do provide for some flexibility in cases where conducting a minor EIS or a scoped EIS would be of no benefit to the city, to the environment, or to the applicant, and where it's a small development proposal for something like a single detached dwelling. And this deck is essentially being mostly constructed where there's an existing deck. The other part of the deck, so most of the deck is being where there's an existing deck. The rest of that deck is being constructed where there's a retaining wall with stairs down to a walkout basement, and where there's crushed stone landscaping. So there's no impact to the vegetation that exists on the property. And so really, we look at that and we look at the terms of reference for the minor EIS, and we think there isn't much benefit to the environment that would be gleaned from completing even that scoped EIS. And we do have a tree information report that was completed for this application. And that tree information report does document the trees that are on the property and does identify that all trees will be retained as part of the development. So for us, we don't think that the scoped EIS is something that is necessary. And we do point to the fact that there is a flexibility to waive that where there's no benefit to the environment from doing that scoped EIS.
Ms. Kachin, does the scoped EIS require them to comment on the trees?
Typically, in terms of the planting plan would include information about what trees, if any, are proposed between the development and the water course. So it just, I can let the forester speak more clearly to what the TAR's relationship is to development, but you know, and typically it wouldn't be much of a challenge, I think, to explain like where landscaping is going to be in addition to the trees. I'd also just like to point out that if I may, that with the reason is while the deck may not be much into the setback water course and the impacts there is not there, it's also about the construction, you know, understanding that vehicles might be going in and out to do any grading or whatever work else needs to be done within the water course setback, and the OP is clear on, you know, providing direction for development not to be in the 3-meter setback. So this scoped EIS is kind of a way of balancing that, you know, understanding that work is going to take place, understanding this through the permission application, but also providing a way for the city to have confidence that, you know, there's no negative impacts by allowing that.
Mr. Chair, Adam Thompson, also with Novatech. I apologize for my voice in advance. Just to kind of build onto what Mr. Suhr said, and perhaps even with the staff planners noting, is that an EIS will inherently looks at many other aspects of the development, species at risk, and you know, more than just the trees, the TIR. In this case, even what staff are saying causes me a little concern that the EIS would have to be scoped beyond what would be required for the deck. We're talking now, staff are talking about the full construction, house construction, trucks in and out. To me, it seems like the requirement for an EIS is just being grabbed onto by staff as something that would be something for a larger development. We're really talking about an expansion of a deck of 11 square meters, and whether that in itself triggers an EIS. And in our opinion, it does not. That it's just not a reasonable request for something like this.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments or, excuse me, questions, Mr. Barrett?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Ms. Wright.
I guess I keep getting caught up a little bit with the word deck. Can you describe the covering? Because I know on the plans, on the site plans, it shows just a covered deck. But am I correct in my reading of the plans that there's a full second story on top of this deck as well? Is there not?
I'd have to double check the plans. Just you bear with me. I'll take a look at that.
Okay. That was my understanding, is it's a 2-story addition more with a recessed porch. But I would love clarification on that, because it's.
I can answer that question.
Who's that?
This is the owner.
Hi.
There is no second story on top of the deck.
And your name is?
David Barron, I'm the owner.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
So the 2-story addition is simply where, I guess on the old plans, it looks like a a little conservatory or a little
Yeah,
glass.
yeah, the two-story addition is above that.
And so
And
it's
that
only
is,
on,
that is beyond the 30-meter.
okay, and that's on the right-hand side of the
Yeah,
deck.
and that's house. That's not deck. That's not what we're talking about here.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
deck simply has a roof over top.
Correct. Covered
Okay.
deck. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLean, any questions?
None, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Baltz, any questions?
Just one. So the EIS that we've been discussing is one thing, but it's also mentioned a planting plan for shoreline renaturalization. Is that a separate condition? And are you planning to provide that even if the EIS wouldn't need to be provided? Or are they together?
Our understanding, based on the wording of the condition, is that it is part of the EIS. It's only worded as one condition. If we were to have the condition removed, we would want the condition removed in its entirety.
As a follow-up to you, Mr. Chair, that what is the condition of the, I'm trying to get a handle on what the concern is here and what the condition is right now. Is the shoreline in need of renaturalization? What's the condition down there? And what would be the impact on whatever is planted in that 30-meter setback right now?
So the property owner might be able to speak to this, but
Yeah, I can answer that.
Yeah.
So the house is on a beach. The beach is in its total natural, the shoreline is in its total natural state. And my property and all of the other properties on the beach have a retaining wall that has been built up, and then grass to the house. All of the houses on that beach are all exactly the same.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Barron, the so below that wall, it's just natural beach,
Beach,
whatever.
yeah,
it was.
it's a natural beach. Yeah.
Thank you.
So no, just last, do you have any further, Mr. Seward, to say? You give you the last word.
No, nothing further other than we think that this development meets the tests for a permission application. We think there's no impact on neighboring dwellings. And so we think that this permission constitutes good land use planning without the condition for the EIS. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that we'll be giving you our decision within 10 days. So we'll reserve and we'll let you know how our deliberations go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Ms. McLean, we'll be giving you a call and setting up a discussion with you to discuss all the reserved judgments. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.